welcome to Season 3 of You're Not Alone with Townsend. My name is Townsend, and if you've followed my journey, you know that I'm not only a musician, but I'm also a mental health advocate. I use my platform to help spread awareness, love, build community, and simply help people feel less alone in their struggles. In the last couple of years, I've had the chance to interview people from all over the world about a huge variety of mental health topics, and I cannot thank each of you enough for helping us continue to shine a light on the world. Every other week this season, we're bringing you the best interviews we've had. Make sure to like and follow this podcast if you're enjoying it. And if you want to keep up with everything we've got going, follow us on socials at Townsendtmusic. Hope you enjoy. What is up, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of You're Not Alone with Townsend, Season 3. This season has been amazing. I've gotten to chat with a ton of people that I've never met before, people from all over the world. This episode, we're going to be chit-chatting with one of my good buddies, April Lane. I've known her. We just kind of chatted about it the last time we've seen each other because all the craziness going on in the world and because of something that we'll talk about in just a little bit. It's been a couple of years since I've seen her, but just the kindest soul I have ever met. And she's been struggling with something called Tarlov Cyst, which is something I knew nothing about beforehand until my friend April went through it. I've been keeping up with her, and I thought, what a perfect diagnosis to chit chat with on the podcast. So April, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. So grateful.
Oh, it is. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Tarlov Cyst?
So people pronounce it differently. Tarlov. You hear it pronounced differently, but yeah, either way.
Well, you know, we're from the South, so we're going to give it a little twang. Tarlov.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly.
Got to put a little cornbread in there.
Exactly. Yeah. Got to do something to make it a little bit less serious.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, no kidding. Make it a little funny. Yeah. So you've been posting about this. I've been keeping up. Obviously, we text, just trying to check in with one another. And it's been quite the ride, which we will get to in a little bit. But let's start with who is April? Your name, age, job, whatever you want to share.
Okay. Yeah. Gosh, who's April? So I'm 38. I'm a sixth generation Arkansan. So me and my family have been in Arkansas a long time. So my accent is the accent is strong with me.
I feel it.
I've done a lot of things in my life as far as jobs and different things. But what I do now is I'm a marriage and family therapist. So I got my master's degree in marriage and family therapy. So I'm a trauma-focused therapist mostly, and I work at Capstone Wellness at a treatment center called Capstone Treatment Center. So I've been there for a couple years. I'm also a yin yoga teacher, a meditation and mindfulness instructor, and then I also have some certifications in somatics. So kind of a broad spectrum of things, but I primarily focus on helping people heal and helping people process trauma and helping them live well. And that's what I've been doing the last few years. I also have a 15-year-old boy, so I'm a mom, and I love that.
Bless you.
Yes, I'm obsessed with animals. Like, I love them so much. And other than that, I mean, I'm a friend of Jesus, and I am very much rooted and grounded in trying to learn how to suffer well. So this has been quite the journey, and I think it's taken a good little chunk of my life now has been spent in pain and trying to figure out how to navigate through that and chronic pain and learning about this illness and going through a bunch of hoops before I even got to like a diagnosis, things like that we'll talk about. So all of those things have really shaped me into who I am today. In my former life, I was also like an environmental and health advocate. So for years, I did a lot of work in the environmental field and, worked during the Mayflower oil spill and the Fayetteville oil and gas extractions. And so I made a documentary film with my sister-in-law and at the time my husband. And it like changed my life. So there's just been this kind of like evolution of things that have kind of come together to put me where I am right now, talking to you about this.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, how cool. You've lived quite a life for just 38.
Yeah, I know. I
Yeah.
don't feel 38. I feel
Yeah.
83.
Oh, yeah, there you go. I thought you were gonna say I feel 18,
Sometimes.
but yeah, I guess you're
No,
right. Yeah.
no,
I think it's
no.
ironic your jobs, all of them together, are helping people heal well and helping
Yeah.
people find a
Hmm.
better way while you're sitting like up on the couch after an appointment today. That's just so
Yeah.
ironic to
Yeah.
me. And I was
Hmm.
saying earlier, you're just like the kindest, most positive person. You talk about
Oh,
Jesus
thank
all the
you.
time and just
Thank you.
living in the light. And so it's really interesting to me to see you navigate this really just totally vague journey throughout the years and just being like, what in the world could it be? So let's hop right into what is Tarlov cyst disease? Like, what does that
Yeah.
even mean?
So, I'm going to give like the fifth grade definition because the like academic definition is, and I'll just read it right off the page. Uh, Tarlov cysts are also known as perineural or sacral nerve root cysts, and those are dilations of the nerve root sheaths, and they're abnormal sacs filled with cerebral spinal fluid, and they cause very progressive, painful radiculoth, right? Well, radiculopathy, basically
There you
nerve
go.
pain.
Say that
So
7 times fast.
the fifth grade like way that I share this with people and I tell them what it is at some point an individual has had some kind of either trauma or injury. They think now potentially some genetics could come into play, but something has happened in the spinal column where cerebral spinal fluid has drained, leaked in some way, and it accumulates inside of the nerve sheath.
Mhm.
So in our, spine, we have tons of nerves, and inside each one of those nerves, there's a sheath that protects that nerve. So somehow the cerebral spinal fluid gets into the nerve and expands the nerve out and causes a cyst. And that presses on nerves all around it. So it can
Mhm.
press on other nerves. So it can cause, chronic inflammation. I mean, tons and tons of different kinds of symptoms. And most of the time, I thought they were located mostly in the sacrum. That's where mine are. Mine were located at S2 and S3 in like the sacrum. So the lowest part of your spine, like where you're sitting, if you sit
Mhm.
down, that's where you're, usually sitting on. But they actually can be throughout the entire spinal column. So as I did more research and talked to a lot more people, what I learned was actually they can be in your cervical spine, your lump, they can be anywhere in the entire spinal column. Um, it's kind of an interesting thing as I started researching it because I I didn't realize that Tarlov cysts were number one even a thing, but I didn't realize that they are so commonly seen in the medical community. Like, I mean, all the time, people are seeing these in MRI images. And as I've talked to doctors more about it, they're like, oh, we see these all the time. They're super common. And yet the pretty much overall overarching opinion in the medical community, and especially as with most doctors I met with here in Arkansas, is that these don't cause issues for people,
Hmm.
that they don't cause the kind of pain that like I experienced and many other people experience, that usually they're asymptomatic. And that is true that they can be asymptomatic for a lot of people. But in my case, I mean, it's been 5 years of excruciating
Hmm.
nonstop
You were the
pain.
lucky one.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that have this diagnosis and that or who don't have the diagnosis but now know that they have this and are trying to get the diagnosis. Like they know it's on the image and so they're trying to like go through all the process of like getting the diagnosis and so they can have treatment. Um, there's tons of people who constantly are saying like, I had doctors tell me there's no possible way that this could be the issue.
Hmm.
And that was my experience. Like 5 years ago, I was definitely misdiagnosed and diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is just kind of a lovely umbrella for
Yeah,
we don't
we don't
know
know.
exactly what's
Yeah,
going on,
exactly.
but we know that you have these certain symptoms and it seems to correlate with these other people that have these certain symptoms. And I like to say fibromyalgia is just basically saying like unexplained pain in the body and we don't know exactly what the source is,
Yeah.
but it seems to present with inflammation, chronic pain, joint issues, gut issues. It can be all kinds of things. So
That makes sense. And
So,
not to interrupt you, but
oh,
for
oh.
people that don't know, to educate people, I mean, your spine is basically what houses everything in your body. So you got a bad spine,
Mhm,
it could show up in your wrist, it could show up in your ankle and your hips, like you said, your gut. And so, I mean, if you're expanding these myelin sheath and all these different things,
mhm,
if it gets big enough and it hits on just the
mhm.
right spot, the right nerve, it's going to cause pain. Now, I'm pretty sure I read something along the lines of like 1% of people's actually have symptoms. So like everybody else has all
Mhm,
these things, but they're not right in the right spot
mhm,
or big enough or have enough fluid to cause the pain that you
mhm.
had. So that makes it even
Right.
more
Yeah.
complex.
Yeah, I do question. I will say, because I've read that too, and I will say that ever since I joined, there's a Facebook group that you can join where it has people from all over the world that have come together that like have this disease or have, had scans and they have these cysts. And I think that we need more research
Oh
because
yeah.
I definitely think that, they on average about 10% of people in the world have cysts in
Mhm.
their spine in some way. But out of that 10%, not very many, as many have been reported to have symptomatic cysts. But that seems to be changing because there seems to be quite a lot of people that are joining that group. I mean, it's like thousands upon thousands of people now at this point that have joined that group that are talking about, no, like I've been told that this can't be causing my problem. But here, but then I went and had surgery or I did or I aspirated the fluid or, a number of different things you can try. And then their symptoms went away. So it's like there's some kind of gap. There's a
For
gap
sure.
between what patients are experiencing in real time and then what doctors and then the field in general are being told is possible with these
Absolutely.
cysts.
And I'm sure it's one of those things that if you don't have it, you don't even know. I'm sure there needs to be
No,
more research. Like I said, I hadn't even
yeah.
heard of it before you, and I love to
Mhm.
research these things and know more. What were, other than just like chronic pain, what were some of your symptoms that led to
Mhm.
this diagnosis?
Yeah, I mean, I had the chronic nerve pain since really 2019. So that actually started in roughly 2019. Weakness in my legs. I couldn't sit like on my sacrum. I just couldn't sit for very long without starting to have more of that pain throughout my legs. And really, I was starting to get also referred pain because anytime you got an issue in the spine and it's causing pain in one part of your body, you can also have referred pain. So then you've just got this whole systemic thing that's happening and where my cysts were located and where the cysts were being compressed. I was also having like gastrointestinal issues, menstrual dysfunction and issues with my monthly cycle, urinary problems, constant spinal and back pain that would just shift throughout the spinal column. It just depended pretty much constant joint pain and inflammation like throughout because my body was it actually was a beautiful thing my body was doing. It was trying to like resolve like the issue.
Right.
Like there was this pain and this fluid pressing and causing issues on these nerves. And so my body was like, ooh, danger, danger, Will Robinson. Like we need to pump out, inflammation is actually good for us. Like it's just when you have something going on constantly, your body can't resolve, then you're just in this like cycle and chronic state of inflammation. So that was the worst. I would say the worst of it was the nerve pain and the chronic inflammation because it was just like throughout the whole body. Like I remember, and this wasn't too long ago, even up until just before surgery, even though I found some things that did help, I would close my eyes and like do body scans, and try to do some meditation and mindfulness to kind of like help with the pain. And I would just scan my whole body and I would land in my eyes. And I would notice that my eyes, when I would stop and like pause my awareness on my eyes, I didn't sense pain there. But that was the only place that I didn't sense like this. I describe it as like a dog chewing on a bone. Like it just feels like your spine, your body, the inside of your body is like the bone that like a dog is chewing on. Um, it's the worst pain that I've ever felt. And I've heard from a lot of other people like it's the worst pain out there. Like there's really not much you can do about nerve pain other than you can try to take some things to manage it, but I chose not to do that because I wanted to observe and see the progression of symptoms because sometimes the solution to a health issue is in how the symptoms change and progress And I knew, and I ruled out fibromyalgia in the first year and a half of the diagnosis. I think that the only other thing I would add to that, as far as what, symptoms I had, was because of all of the pain and chronic pain, like I would have definitely some mental health impacts to it too, because your spine, your nervous system is like the thing that operates everything in your body. And so I would notice some days like I would feel very grounded and like, I'd feel like, okay, I can handle this. And then by the afternoon, the pain would like shoot up and rise. And I would just feel like I was like crumbling inside. Like I was kind of in a box and the walls were coming in and I just couldn't. And no matter how many tools and meditation, mindfulness, like deep breath work, like no matter what I chunked at it, it was like, no, the walls were just like still closing in. So you can't really get around that big of an impact to your nervous system. There's not really much you can do. So, I mean, that was definitely the biggest chunk of it. It would come and go though. Like there would be times where a new symptom would come and I'd be like, oh God, is this going to stay? And then like the next day, like it would kind of be gone. And then, so it was super hard to track. Like whenever I'd try to like look at the patterns and track like, okay, like diet, for instance, because I did like a low inflammatory diet and tried to do just anything I could naturally and holistically to reduce the pain and like help the nerves, like support the nerves. And so I was doing all kinds of therapies, massage therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually I did hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which I cannot give that a big enough thumbs up.
Mm-hmm.
That if anyone's out there struggling with chronic pain, to look into hyperbaric oxygen therapy, because that helps them too. And then just physical therapy, CBD was helpful. Topical CBD was super helpful with managing the burning, stinging, like kind of sensations and stuff throughout. But yeah, it definitely was, it would cycle in and out.
Yeah.
Which was really hard to manage because you just never know. You would have a good day. I'd have like one good day. And then the next day I would just feel like I can't even move. Like you just want to lay on the floor and like, scream and cry and wail, and yet you can't. You need to take your kid. Yeah, you need to take your kid to school. You need to go to work. You need to pay your bills, and like these things don't revolve around chronic pain. And unfortunately for most people with Tarlov Cyst disease, until it gets to the most progressed stage, we walk around and you don't know that we're sick, that you don't even know we're in pain. Like people would come up and be like, gosh, you look so great today. Or I'd have friends be like, you look so bright today. Like you look so good. And I'm like, I feel like I'm dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I was like, wow, like I'm glad I look like I'm doing really well. I'm glad I look healthy. But I was the furthest thing from healthy that I've ever been in my whole life.
Yeah.
And in the most sane.
To like go to the doctor and be like, hey, I got all these things. And the doctors be like, we don't know. So what did, you posted on social media. And like I said, I've kept up with your journey for really years. You'll post a status about like taking time to kind of figure this thing out. Go to the doctor, no answers. Go to the doctor, no answers. This went on and on and on. So how did you finally receive a proper diagnosis? Like how did that happen? Are you enjoying this conversation? This project is funded by patrons and sponsors, so if you like what you hear and you'd like to help us continue changing lives in 2024, we would love to have you join the family. Reach out to us at townsendtmusic@hotmail.com if you'd like to be a sponsor, or hop on patreon.com/townsendtmusic to join the patron family. As a thank you, you're going to receive extra podcast questions and content every episode, discounts, exclusive content, and so much more. So join the family and let's continue changing lives.
Well, so this last year I bought a house and land, renovated the house, and I had gotten to a point where I kind of had given up, not given up on living, but I had given up on like a solution.
Yeah.
And so I didn't go to any more doctors for about 8 months to a year. I kind of was like, okay, I'm going to just try to get this to some degree manageable. And I had gotten it a little bit manageable about 2.5 years ago. Manageable enough, I'll say it that way, manageable enough where I was like, okay, like I can tolerate like a 6 out of 10 on the pain scale. Like, okay, I can't do a 9 out of 10. I can do a 6 out of 10. Like, so let me just see if I can live with this and live with it well. Um, I fell down the stairs one day, and just like my last two steps, like I was wearing socks, never wear socks down the
Correct.
wooden
My mom
stairs.
told me that so many times.
I had never had stairs before, so nobody told me. So I slipped and I landed, I landed and hit my sacrum, and then I
Mm.
kind of hit like my low back. And like at first I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really hurt. And then as the day went on, I was like, okay, like nothing's broken or anything. I just kind of stayed home from work that day and like laid around and iced, and like it hurt pretty bad. But I was like, okay, I think I'm okay. And then a couple days later, as I got up and, started moving more, I just noticed a pretty significant, sharp increase of the symptoms, mainly and really distinctly noticing it in the sacrum. And so I was like, what in the world? Like I kind of was like, the alarms were going off again.
Mm-hmm.
And I just,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, my intuition just kind of kept saying, and it had been doing this for years, but all the professionals and doctors were like,
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah.
know, or this is what,
It's nothing.
yeah, this is what it is. And I've also, just to be transparent, I've had a lot of trauma in my like childhood trauma, a lot of trauma in my history. And so I had some folks be like, it could just be that like you've had a lot of trauma in your body, and like, there's just the onset of like the experiences of those
Yeah.
things it's come to a head. Um, but I sat in my floor one night and I was praying and crying and like just kind of almost just like, I cannot do this. Like, because it was back up to a 9 out of 10 on the pain scale. So finally, I'd figured out, like, I need to look back at those scans, those MRIs from 2019. I need to go back to the beginning of right whenever I started having the onset of symptoms. And I went back and I connected a couple dots that I hadn't connected before, that I had potentially had a CSF leak in 2019, early in 2019. And I'm not anti-chiropractic before I say this, so hopefully everybody listening knows that I'm not anti-chiropractic, but I'd had some chiropractic adjustments that I had some injury from. And so I had some CSF leak at that time because I ended up going to the ER. They did a scan 6 months later and found these cysts at the base of my spine. And I just took that when I saw that, and I connected that dot to that one. And I was like, I wonder if these cysts are causing the issue. And I just dove into the internet and found the Facebook group. I found the 3 surgeons, prominent surgeons in America that even like do surgery on these and treat them. And I just went through journal article after journal article and like read their research that they've been putting out just in recent years. And it was as though I was on my couch and I was reading through. I mean, I looked like a crazy person.
I bet
Because
you've
I was
got
like,
all the
right,
dots connecting.
yeah, I was like, right, I was like just fully submerged because I was like, I think this is it. Like, I think that they're all wrong. And I
Mm-hmm.
actually think I don't know if it's 100% of my problems, but I think this is a big piece of it. Because as my symptoms got worse through the years, I was like, chronic inflammation can cause other issues in the body.
Oh, yeah.
So it may not be the absolute end all be all, but I was like, this has to be it. So I contacted Dr. Feigenbaum in Dallas, Texas, who is the doctor that he's been doing this the longest, 20 plus years. He actually pretty much wrote the book on surgical intervention for Tarlov cysts. Flew down, saw him, and he just confirmed within a 20-minute meeting with him. He showed the images, pulled them up, zoomed in on my, cysts, and did a, assessment of me and checked me out and went over all my symptoms. And he was like, do you want to do something about this? And I was like, yes, I
about
do.
5 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I really do.
Wow.
So like that's how it came. I mean, I hate to, be a haterade of the modern medical model, but the modern medical model is severely lacking
Well,
because
sure.
it's not patient driven, it's not patient focused. And so, I diagnosed myself,
Yeah.
to be honest. And then I went and saw, an expert to confirm it.
Yeah. And you'd never heard of it before, yeah?
Oh no. I mean, I had never heard of it before. I had vaguely, like, once I started racking my brain and going back to 2019, whenever they first scanned me. I remember asking the rheumatologist there, uh, could this be a thing like this little Tarlov thing? And I remember, which is why it was hard to remember it. I remember her saying like, oh, no, 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 those are on every scan nearly I look at. Like they're super common. So that can't possibly be causing your issues.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I only had one cyst
Yeah.
in 2019. But you fast forward to 2024, he actually found when he performed the procedure three cysts there.
Wow.
So, it progressively got worse, of course, over time,
Interesting.
because that fluid was continuing to get trapped and like, expand there. So yeah, I mean, it definitely was a huge process to even get. I mean, if you think about it,
Yeah.
it was 5 years.
Yeah. And you doing a
It's
lot of
five
the work.
years.
And I will say,
Mhm.
so it's insane to think about how little we know, right? And I feel like I truly believe the body is like
Mhm.
this amazing, complex thing, and we just don't know that much about it. We're just taking
No.
educated
Mm-mm.
guesses as we go. And so you think about something like Tarlov, your doctor treats colds and
Yeah.
cancer and
No.
the things
Yeah.
that you hear about a lot. And so you come in with this thing and they're like pain. Who knows? So I
Yeah.
hate
Mhm.
I hate that it took such a long time, but I want people to know how important it is to advocate for yourself because without
Gosh.
you looking
Yes.
it
Yeah.
up, they'd have had no
Mhm.
idea. No fault of their own. There is a
Sure.
huge
Yeah.
lack in
Mhm.
research and figuring things out.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Huge. And I mean, as I've talked to, primary care doctors, and I have a great primary care physician who's helping me walk through this. They get about 2 seconds of like what Tarlovs are in medical school, and it's very, very cut and dry to this this thing that just it's
Yeah.
very common and it doesn't really cause symptoms for most people. And
Right.
that's pretty much like kind of what they get. And so, there's just that gap. And I think the patients, like us, the patients, we have to kind of be the ones to go, hey, we really need to close this gap. Like this is a really big issue. And tons of people are walking around like I can't not see people now.
Yeah.
Like when I see people shuffling because they're like having a hard time sitting and it's super uncomfortable for them, I can't help but notice it. And I just wonder, I'm like, man, I can't help but wonder if you might be one of those many people that are kind of struggling with this, but you just don't even know that it's
Sure.
there,
Think about
So
how
yeah.
many things we don't even know about. I mean, there were
Oh
not
yeah.
even not even that long ago when my mom was younger. I remember they made this huge medical research thing, and they came out and they're like, "Your gallbladder I think it was a gallbladder. Don't quote me on this. It's something along the lines of your gallbladder doesn't do anything. We can just take it out of everybody." So they just started taking it out because it served no
Yeah.
purpose whatsoever. Well, you fast forward a few years and then they come back out and they're like, never mind. Turns out all your organs are important. And so I just feel like we're all
Yeah.
figuring life out. You know what I mean?
We're totally figuring life out. My son one time
Even the
said,
doctors.
oh, even the doctors. My son one time said it perfectly. He was much younger. I think he was like 8 years old at this time, but he goes, we're all even adults, just kind of like toddlers.
He's
And I was
not
like,
wrong.
you're not wrong, honey. Like, I
We're
mean,
all
we're
trying to figure it out.
we're just trying to figure it out, and medicine has come a long way. So I definitely am not, anti-medicine. I think people need to go to the doctor and get wellness checkups and things. But just like you just said, you have to, because you know your body.
Hmm.
Like I kept through those years going, something's not right. There's something else here. They're missing something. We are missing something. Like something else is going on. Because I went from climbing mountains, kayaking, like super fit, super active. It was like an overnight thing. It wasn't like a really progressive thing. It was like an overnight thing. All of a sudden, I was in extreme pain from going from nowhere, from 0 to 100, um, which is pretty indicative of there being some like a thorn in your side, like something that just occurred that like shifted something in your system. So you do have to listen to your body and like follow the signs that it gives you and tells you where to go. And sometimes you have to straight up tell a doctor, like, if they are pushing you around and say, hey, my body, you work for me. And I'm going to say that as respectfully as I can,
Yeah.
but I came here and you are to help me navigate this. I did have to do that once or twice and get very, direct, but
Sure.
it's okay to get direct with, authority if it's necessary. Like if it's your
Sure.
body, you've got to advocate for yourself because no one else is going to do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm huge on advocating for yourself. And it's kind of like we've talked about this in many episodes, having a mental health therapist, and sometimes it's just not the right fit for you. So if you feel like
But
you and your doctor are just button heads, they're not listening, stick up for yourself. That doesn't work. Maybe find another doctor that flows a
yeah,
little bit better for you. Now,
yeah.
does the treatment that they talked about with you, is it curable? Is there treatment? Just the surgery? Will it come back? What?
Yeah, that's the unfortunate piece that, I'm hopeful it won't, but the reality is that once you have these cysts, like once you get diagnosed, there's always a chance for recurrence of cysts. And, some people go 10 plus years and never have and don't have any return. Some haven't had any return in 15 plus years, but, some people go a few years and then maybe they'll have them in another area of their spine or maybe the same area that they, had surgical intervention on. So there's not a quote unquote cure yet. I do think that there's a lot more research starting to happen just looking at so what's causing the CSF leaks, like what's
Mhm.
actually behind like the development of the cysts. But from what I've researched, most of that is like there's some kind of injury to the spine. So as long as humans can get spinal injuries and can have CSF leaks, then there's this chance and risk of, I don't even love the fact they call it a disease because it doesn't quite fit the same,
Yeah,
it doesn't quite fit, but the
maybe
reason,
more prone to,
yeah, maybe
yeah,
more prone to, having
cysts.
fluid get trapped in pretty much anyone who, if you have a CSF leak, you could potentially, have that fluid get trapped in those nerve sheaths. And if it gets trapped and doesn't flow through and it starts expanding, you're going to potentially have some of that nerve pain as a result. So there's no cure. There are a couple different approaches to treating them, though. So I chose after several months of and again, crazy research and kind of like looking at and doing my due diligence and looking at multiple surgeons and, a lot of numbers, a lot of client outcomes, patient outcomes. And I just decided for me at where I was that it was right to have surgery because I was unable to work anymore. Like I was having to work from home the last few months before surgery. My job and my coworkers, my boss, everybody was super and is super supportive. So they opened that door for me so that I could work from home. But I didn't realize how much I had declined in just the few months leading up to surgery. I mean, it was just kind of like a huge drop off. So I chose surgery because it seemed like the best option for me. Now, there are other surgical procedures that a patient could opt for. I opted out of those primarily because um, I just didn't see the positive outcomes for someone that had my kind of case.
Hmm.
So it seemed like there would be more of a possibility for recurrence of the cysts if I went that direction.
Yeah.
So I chose the surgical route, which is definitely the harder, longer recovery way to go. I hope one day there's a cure for this. Can't I can't empathize any more than I mean, every bone in my body just daily is like thinking of and praying for people who are having to struggle with
Hmm.
this condition because it's absolutely all consuming,
Yeah.
and your family, your friends, I mean, it consumes your life to a degree, especially if you let it, you can end up, revolving completely around this. And anyone who has chronic pain knows what I'm talking about. Like you
Sure.
could
Yeah.
really kind of end up rotating around that condition.
Yeah. You kind of learn to
So,
isolate.
yeah. Now a lot of people do also, they don't opt for surgery. Some people cannot have surgery on these cysts. If it's progressed to a certain point, sometimes surgery is not even an option for them. Because what can happen, and if this was what I thought might happen if I did not have surgery now, was the cyst can actually eat away at your spine. Like it can actually the bone, like it can
Mm.
chisel away at the bone. And so you can get to a particular point where you're inoperable and you just kind of have to rely on pharmaceuticals and things to manage your pain, which most patients that have symptomatic Tarlov cysts are on pharmaceutical, like nerve blockers, things like that, pain medication. I just I opted out of all of that pre-surgery because again, I wanted to see the condition. And I had many days where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I'm going to need to get on, but I just kept thinking if I can make it to, if I can get to, the surgery, then I'll address pharmaceuticals and the need for those post-surgery.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do end up, being on pain medications for the rest of their lives because they can't do anything about the condition. And it's those people that my heart just cries out for because in that sense, I was one of the lucky ones. Like I at least have about a 70% chance of a recovery of some kind after having this surgery.
How long ago did you have the surgery?
It has been 9 weeks tomorrow.
Oh, very soon.
Yeah, tomorrow will be 9 weeks. So I'm in the very early stages of the recovery still. So I'm able to kind of partially sit up now. But yeah, it was definitely a very extensive surgery. The surgery itself didn't last super long. It was only a couple hours surgery, but the post recovery is a very, very long recovery because they have to go in, they have to cut into the nerve, take the fluid out, wrap the nerve, secure the nerve that's wrapped so that it doesn't fill back up again. So there's quite a bit that goes into it. That leaves your body kind of in a state where it's like, oh my, we just had it's a major surgery. So it's definitely not anything I took lightly, but I eventually was like, this, I'm gonna go for it and see what happens. And I had people on both sides of the aisle. I had some people that were like, oh yeah, do it. And then I had some people like, you should not do this until it's like, absolutely necessary. And I was like,
you're like, we're there.
We're there.
But we're there.
Yeah, we're there. I said 3 years ago, and then again, like this last year, if I ever came across like a solution that was going to be, we'll say even life-threatening, but because surgery can be very dangerous. If I got to where I lost 60% or more of my quality of life, then I would be willing to try whatever. Like I would go to those more like the extremes and things. And this last year that happened. I lost more than 60% of my quality of life. And I was noticing just constant, like, and I'm a therapist, I have I have 15 toolboxes of tools, in my backpack. And I was throwing everything at it and I still was watching as like this kind of fog of depression and anxiety was starting to sit on me. And I just was like having to fight all the time to enjoy life. And I was like, yeah, we're there. We're definitely there where we've got to try something else.
That's incredibly impressive that not only did you advocate for yourself, but I mean, doctors saying, nah, that's not what it is. Oh, you're fine. Here, throw some pills at it. And you just knowing, and like you said, throwing all the strategies at it, all the things for mental health, just so cool. As we wrap this up, what do you wish people knew about Tarlov?
I think probably that it looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
Like it looks different for every single patient that has it. And that most people who have Tarlov, like it's a disease, it's a condition that most people, as they're moving around through the world and you were to pass them or encounter them in a coffee shop or somewhere, you would never know.
They might even not know.
And they may not know for sure. Like, so it's a hidden illness, it's they call it one of the mascots for actually the disease is a zebra. Like in the medical community, I don't know if you've heard of that term before, but it's a rare thing that like people just, you can't really see and you don't really know much about it. So, I'd love for people to get a little bit more familiar with it. Like just, look at it a little bit, and you may even have a family member. There might be somebody that's been having chronic pain and chronic back pain and especially sacral pain, but it could be anywhere for a really long time, or they might have Tarlov Cyst sitting on their scans like I did.
Yeah.
In there, I had to go just pull my scan out of my like paperwork and like peel back through it. And it'd been 5 years later. And I was like, oh, they said I had Tarlov cysts, back in 2019. So I just need to get some better opinions on this and see if this, because it could be that is something that's causing them a lot of the pain they're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anybody could have it. And I think that goes with a lot of the topics that we talk about is everybody's got a story. You never know what they're going through. Even they may not even know what they're going through. But April, thank you so much for joining us, for kind of educating us on something, the zebra diagnosis that a lot of people don't know about. I know I have learned a lot. Everybody that's listening, you know how this works. April and I are going to continue chit-chatting. We're going to do some more personal questions about April herself. If you want to hear those, hop on to patreon.com/TownsendTmusic. You can hear us keep chit-chatting. If not, we'll catch you next time.
If you'd like to hear the rest of this interview, visit patreon.com/TownsendTmusic. And don't forget, you can also watch the interviews on our YouTube channel at Townsendtmusic YouTube.
If you're looking to buy or sell, I have the perfect realty company for you. Clark & Co. Realty is located in the Benton, Bryant, Arkansas area, and they understand that buying or selling a home is more than just a transaction. It's a life-changing experience. That's why their team of highly seasoned real estate professionals is dedicated to providing exceptional, personalized services for all their clients. They truly take great pride in the relationships they build, and they always work relentlessly on the client's behalf to help them achieve their perfect real estate goals. They always have the client in mind, and I can speak firsthand when I say how reliable, trustworthy, and quick they were. When I was looking to buy my first home, they were there with me every step of the way, answering every question I could think of. They showed me a great amount of knowledge and patience through the process. It's no wonder they've won so many awards for their outstanding services and their excellent relationships with clients. So if you're looking to buy or sell, there is no better option than Clark & Co. Realty.